So this season, we've been talking to different broadcasters from around the Ontario Hockey League and getting their take on the teams that they cover. And I figured it was about time we talked some Barrie Colts. So we're going to bring in Thomas West, who, of course, is the Rogers TV host for our home broadcast. And Thomas, you've been following the team closely from ice level, and this team looking like they're ready for a deep run after that trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, this has been in my short time here in Barrie the best Barrie Colts team I think that I've seen. I mean, you can look back to their Cardwell, Brant Clark days, just a couple of years ago, and that team it felt like it was a really good team, but you could tell why they didn't make it far in the playoffs. But I mean, this Barrie Colts team I think has got everyone really excited because they are very deep.
Yeah, and you mentioned that previous team that made it to the second round. It seemed like once Evan Vierling was taken out of the lineup due to the injury in that second round against North Bay, it was over. The Colts had a hard time getting things going with the lines. But this year, as you mentioned, there's a lot of depth here offensively, and they might even have one of the better defensive units in the OHL.
Yeah, defense is definitely a strong point. I mean, you look at when the Barrie Colts had the guys out at the World Juniors and they lost a couple games. It obviously would have been better to have them back in the lineup, but they looked fine. I mean, look back to even, the New Year's game that we were talking about on the broadcast the other day. Lots of guys out of the lineup, they still look really good. And, it feels like if you take one or two pieces out of the lineup, which, injuries happen, we've seen it. I mean, you talked about the Veerling thing that happened that really crushed the Colts a couple of years ago. This seems like a team that could persevere through any of that.
And they did make a big addition ahead of the OHL trade deadline, making another move with the North Bay Battalion, bringing in Anthony Romani Anthony Romani and Owen Van Steensel. So two key pieces. And when you reunite that line with Dallin Wakely, they had some great runs with the battalion. Right now, it seems like that chemistry has kind of picked up where it left off.
Yeah, it looked like the Barrie Colts could go a couple different ways. There were so many players floating out there at the deadline, but this was the most exciting way I think it could have gone, right? I mean, just reuniting that line. The Barrie Colts saw a lot of what that line could do against them a couple years ago, probably a little bit too much there with the chemistry that Wakely and Van Steensel and Romani all put together. And, we talked about, Gene was saying on the broadcast the other day about, it might take Anthony Romani a couple games to get, kind of back into it. It hasn't really, right? Like it's been 3 games. He's already got 2 goals. The first one I know is an empty netter there against Windsor, but it already feels like he's rolling. And I remember talking to Dallin Wakely about that trade as well, and he said, he was a big advocate of that happening. I think they were talking behind the scenes a little bit too, and it's not just a great player they're getting, but they're getting a multiplier on the kind of talent they're getting when you reunite them with a trio of players that say they're not just have great chemistry on the ice, but they're really good buddies off the ice too. So I think that's going to be really exciting for the Colts.
Well, that line had over 300 points combined last year with the North Bay Battalion. And that was a North Bay team that went all the way to the Eastern Conference final, forced 7 games against Oshawa. So they have that playoff experience. And then you add the depth with some heart and soul players like Bo Jelsma and Cole Baudouin. The offensive unit really seems to be coming along here just in time for this playoff push.
Yeah. And another guy that you might want to add to that mix too is Brad Gardner. Like he was a guy who it felt like was really starting to slump there for a bit. And then I chatted with him on the broadcast the other day, and now he's starting to find that chemistry with the Emil Hemming line and Bodie Stewart on that line as well. So I mean, I think that just kind of talks to the depth that this team has. And the crazy thing is that you talk about all these big players with the guys that came over from North Bay with Wakely and Romani and all of them. And sometimes you actually forget that Bo Jelsma's on this team. And he might be the best player on the Barrie Colts, but this team's so deep and they have so many, really strong players that it just feels like this lineup is pretty unstoppable if they can find themselves in a high seeding in the playoffs.
And you touched on Emil Hemming there on that line with Brad Gardner. We saw him have a breakout game against Niagara on Sunday. He also had the celebration there with his second goal. It was a different celebration from him, but for the Barrie Colts, you want to get Hemming going because it seems like he was having some difficulties adjusting to the North American game.
Yeah, and the weird thing is that the way that he's getting acclimated back here was going back and playing with his countrymen, like at the World Juniors. He said that was a big boost for him when he went to the World Juniors, found some confidence. And there was a scenario where that actually lowered the confidence of Emil Helmich, who didn't score until things mattered, right? After the preliminary round. But then he gets some big goals for Finland, is a huge part of the reason that they end up going to the gold medal game and playing against the US. He comes up when it matters. He had the monkey off the back celebration during the World Juniors as well, and that felt like it was a monkey off the back for the Barrie Colts as well, because it seems like it's boosted his confidence. And you know, when you start having confidence, it's crazy how things start happening. Like if you look at Emil Hemming, obviously his second goal there against Niagara was a beauty. The other one was the easiest goal you could possibly score, right? A tap it on the back door, but you just start finding yourself in the right place at the right time when you're feeling good, and Emil Hemming's feeling good.
And another way to build confidence too for a team is when you've got solid goaltending. Hillebrand, of course, playing for Team USA, and Ben Hrebeck, a bit of an unknown coming into the regular season. There's the question marks: did they acquire a backup goaltender? But Hrebeck answering the call, and now he's ranked 10th in the North American NHL Central scouting list.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe the transformation of Ben Hrebeck from last year. Maybe it's not even a transformation because we didn't even see him last year. He played 2 games the whole season. So he's played, what, 20 games now in his Ontario Hockey League career, which that's not a lot of games for NHL Central Scouting to take a look at him. So you think, well, I wasn't even sure if he was going to be on that list. I don't think anyone had any idea what to do with Ben Hrebeck because the sample size has been so small, but he's just been so solid. And sometimes you look at backup goaltenders and they have great numbers, and it's because they only play against the worst teams in the league. Well, the Barrie Colts called on Ben Hrebeck to literally hold down the fort for the entire time that Sam Hillebrand was over playing with Team USA at the World Juniors, and he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. He kept up his numbers. He's still the top second or first or second in the league in save percentage and goals against average. And he's playing really good hockey. Like, you saw him making some of those big saves at the beginning of the year, and it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of nice for him. But I mean, you look at number 10 in North America. I mean, if I'm an NHL team, I might draft Ben Hrebeck. I mean, he's big, he's played really well, he fits every category that you'd think an NHL team would want from a goaltender.
Yeah, and that's just it. He's got that size, and he was also in net when they defeated Windsor to snap that 5-game losing streak. So a lot of confidence there, and this is kind of what the team needs in this second half, getting ready for the playoffs in a Central Division that is so tight. Right now, Niagara, of course, sitting top spot in the Central, Barrie second, but not far behind the Sudbury Wolves. And hey, well, Brampton, they seem to be waking up and climbing the standings as well. So where do you see this all shaping out as we get closer to the playoffs? I think it's hard to predict at this point.
Yeah, I don't know, but the implications of not winning the Central or winning the East, I should say, are pretty big for the Barrie Colts, right? Because you got to be the top team in your division to be first or second. That's how it works in the OHL standings. And if you're not first, there's a really good chance that you're third. And if you're third, it means that you're playing a team that was a buyer at the trade deadline. Like if you look, the only real way that you can play a not strong team in the Eastern Conference is if you win the 1 seed. I mean, even the 2 seed, you're going to be playing like right now, it would be Brampton. You would play against the Steelheads, who are, big buyers in the offseason and buyers at the trade deadline as well. So, for the Barrie Colts, this could be a bit of a gift to kind of motivate them down the stretch. I remember thinking about some of the other teams that I've worked on that, the Barrie Colts already know they're going to make the playoffs. It's just a matter of where they're going to be. And sometimes teams have this tendency to, kind of relax because they know they're going to make the playoffs and they can just kind of coast to the finish line. But sometimes that can be like the most dangerous thing for a team because they get in that mindset and then playoffs come around and all of a sudden, you're playing a team at the bottom of the standings that's playing motivated hockey the entire year. And sometimes you get caught sleeping. So for this Barrie Colts team, I mean, it's go, go, go right to the finish. They're not going to have anything clinched up right to the end. And, if you start losing 5 games in a row, like what just happened to the Barrie Colts, you could find yourself not only in second, but maybe third or even fourth because it's just so tight right now at the top of the standings.
Yeah, because there's 7 teams right now that look to be some tough opponents come playoff time. But even at that 8 seed, if say the North Bay Battalion catch Ottawa and get that seed, a Barrie North Bay matchup in the first round, I don't even know if you'd want that. And just with the storylines of former Colts playing their team, and then the North Bay line playing the Battalion.
Yeah, it would definitely create some awkward situations. I mean, we saw what happened in North Bay the other day and that 2-0 loss that the Barrie Colts took with Shamar Moses getting the empty netter and then Zach Weigel gets the game-winning goal, right? So yeah, I mean, North Bay would be the team you want because everyone else is buyers other than maybe the Bulldogs, but uh I think you really want to win the one seed in the East. I mean, the stakes have never been higher to be first in the East, I think.
And after saying all that, we haven't really touched much on the defense. Of course, Kayshawn Aitchison expected to be a first round pick at the 2024 NHL entry draft. For you've been able to talk to him quite a bit with interviews and whatnot. Do you get the sense that he's holding back at all, or do you think he's going all out to impress the scouts?
Yeah, he's going all out. I mean, he's pulling out all the stops to try and be not just a first round draft pick, but a top 15 or top 10. I don't know. It's hard to get a read, right, on where Keyshawn Aitchison's at. I mean, we didn't see much of him last year, and you never want to say a player's personality has kind of changed, but for Keyshawn Aitchison it has. But I think it's more exciting what he's doing now. I talked to him, what about a couple months ago? We had him on the broadcast. It was right when he came back from playing in the CHL versus USA game. And I don't remember the quote exactly in my head, but he kind of was telling me about the style of suits that he's wearing. And he didn't say explicitly, but the style of suits that he's wearing also kind of seem to be mixed in with this attitude that he has where he's towing the line between cocky and confident, um, but still being humble and modest and, knowing that it's all about his game. And man, he has just found the perfect balance between those two things. He's laying out big hits. He's looked confident all year. And, there have been some times this season where Kayshawn Aitchison isn't getting into the offense all that much. Um, but when he's not, he's still doing things that are, greatly contributing to the team where there's, laying down a big hit, getting in a fight, or, he's got the utmost confidence. He's not afraid of anything out there.
And you mentioned the CHL game against Team USA. There was that interesting tidbit when they asked, "Where's your favorite arena to play in outside of your home rink?" And he listed Sudbury. And of course, we know the history between Barrie and Sudbury, so it just goes to show his personality and the flair that he has.
Yeah. But that is the most he's really let up in any interview. Like if you asked Kayshawn Aitchison about that, he won't let that up at all. And I think that kind of, that makes it kind of cooler, this attitude that he's come into the season because he doesn't need to tell people what he's thinking, right? Like he lets his play do the talking when he's out there. And when you watch Kayshawn Aitchison, you know exactly what's going on, right? In Kayshawn Aitchison's head, no one needs to ask and he doesn't need to tell anybody. And I think that's a really cool aspect that we're seeing of Aitchison's game.
Well, either way, this is going to be a fun ride to the playoffs for the Barrie Colts. And Thomas, thanks for doing this. And I guess we'll see you at the rink.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, Mike.
So that's Rogers TV host Thomas West, and it's always great to be able to talk some Barrie Colts. I know usually we're talking to broadcasters from other teams around the Ontario Hockey League, but figured now it's probably a good time to talk a bit about the team that we cover here on Rogers. But still, the Colts are going to be in quite the competition for the Central Division, and they got a couple of big games to go this week. Tonight they're hosting the Brampton Steelheads, so a big Central Division matchup tonight. Puck drop is at 7 p.m. And then Saturday, it's the Brantford Bulldogs coming to town, and they've been one of the hotter teams in the OHL over these last couple of weeks. So you can catch both those games on Rogers TV. Gene and I will have the call along with Thomas West on Rinkside. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to see more videos like this. And yeah, thank you very much for all your support. Talk to you again soon.